Hi, I'm Molly Knight Forde, founder of the Awareness School. And today I want to talk to you about the importance of sexual healing. Now, this is not an easy subject for anyone to speak about. And you may wonder, why am I even talking about this? Like, whose business is it for me to be speaking about my own sexual experience? And the importance of that is that at this time in our evolution on the planet, something is breaking free, having to do with the role of sexuality and our sexual healing. So each one of us has had our own personal experiences. Some of us have been extremely abused and have been victims of rape or harassment. Some have been repeatedly molested as children or abused as children in a sexual manner. And as a collective, there's a lot of healing that needs to take place. But it is time for people to be able to speak their story. It is time for young women to be able to know that it is all right to speak about what has happened to them, or if they're in a threatening situation. It is the time when women must come forward in the workplace and speak out about what has been going on for so long without the fear of losing their jobs. And you can see in current events, people are getting fired, which may never have happened 20 years ago. You can see what happened with the entire Catholic Church, in which 40 and 50 years later, people came forward to speak about an experience when they were 12 or 13 years old. They didn't feel like they could speak at that time. It was so antiquated back then. There was so much shame, and still is, around sex and what sex is for. There is still such a rape culture that is pervasive across the planet. There is lack of respect for each other as human beings. And there is so much porn going on in which people are now addicted to porn and can't really be with each other. But something's happening. There's a revolution happening in which the dehumanization of our population is going to come to a close. And sexual healing is part of that. So with not trepidation, but with boldness, I wanted to speak a little bit about my own experience. And I'm definitely coming from my own experience, and I welcome you to offer up yours, or send me a note, or make a comment in this video, because the more of us who speak out and come together on this issue, the more all of this darkness is out in the open, the more women march for their emancipation, and all people, transgender, fluid sexuality, everyone. We all, gay, lesbian, all of us need to be able to be out and clear and accepted as human beings. So, as a victim of sexual abuse at the age of 12, it is very difficult to express how damaging that is for a person. And for me, it took a very long time to heal these wounds. And in a way, there's so much shame wrapped around it. Like, as a child, you feel like you're so violated, and you see something happening to you and you don't have the power to say no. Something in me simply clammed up and I was frozen. I was unable to stop a situation that was happening to me, and I felt powerless. And so I began to experience a kind of disassociation from my body in that time during those years of sexual abuse. I learned to leave my body during the act of sex. I in no way had mutual consent, and I had no interest, really, at such a young age in doing such an adult thing. So within me, I learned to not have very good boundaries. It was imprinted on me. I learned that it was not very easy for me to say no. And if I said no, I wouldn't be loved. And secondly, for a very long period of time, sex was something that was, in a way, non-existent for me. Even if I was in the act, I wasn't there. I couldn't connect. I would leave my body. And that happened repeatedly and repeatedly over years and years and years. So I have empathy for all of you who have experienced a kind of abuse or molestation or something to that effect as a child, because something is changed in you forever. You can't bring your childhood back. And all of a sudden, you start living a lie. You learn to live this lie, or back then, you learn to live a lie in which everything appeared to be okay, but you knew that you weren't a kid anymore, even amongst your peers. And so something sets in where you learn to live a lie, you learn that you don't have boundaries, and that continues on, and you're disconnected from sex. At least I should be saying I, because that was my experience. So it has such an adverse effect for such a long time. And even as I knew, I got therapy and I began to unravel the story. I was able to relay this to my parents, and I was able to relay it to lovers and somehow undo part of it. But this was like peeling an onion for sure. And sexual healing happens at different levels and can become so profound. And it really is that deep connection, the ability to be there and be vulnerable. And that's difficult even for people who haven't been abused. So our purpose is to truly connect with each other. And sex is a vehicle. And we should not be shamed for that, for whatever kind of sex that is appealing to us, just so we're able to connect. We don't succumb to being an object. And so it takes a great deal of honesty. And with my own experience, as I worked towards my own transformation through different kinds of work on myself, I began to feel the ability to be more honest with my partner. And I began to find places of healing through my own vulnerability of just being there. It was vulnerable for me to simply be present in my body with someone else. And then finally, there's another aspect, which is forgiveness and appreciating the contrast. I recently did a video on contrast, and it spurred me on to speak about what was the greatest contrast in my own life, and it was this sexual abuse. I would not be who I am today without that occurrence. And so I am actually deeply grateful for what happened to me, because in my healing, I am so much more appreciative of the connection that I've gained when I couldn't have it for so long. Now, the forgiveness piece is a little more difficult, but I did have to face my abuser. Not face to face, but energetically, and actually begin to understand what his problems were, and to actually forgive him and understand that he couldn't help it. He couldn't help what he was doing. And so, with all of those practices over many years, I also began to realize that it was time to speak out about this. And I even went to the police department, called the police department in this person's city, and reported him as a sexual abuser almost 40 years later. And there were a group of us who were also abused by this one person. And we tried to gather together to prosecute the school and this teacher. But there was a statute of limitations, so we were unable to. But when I went to that police department, the very ironic thing that was said to me by the detective who took my information, his question to me was, why would you want to disrupt someone's life after all of these years? Are you kidding me? When we suffer from sexual abuse, it takes so much energy away from us and contributes to so much of our suffering. That's why it's so important for us to find a way to heal. But as children, our lives are disrupted, and we can't undo it unless we do. And so revenge is not part of the answer, but speaking out and letting other people know that this does go on, that this has gone on, that this must stop, is the greatest message we can give. Thanks for listening to this one. Please let me know your experience. Have a great week.